So, for like the three people out there in the world that don't know who you are, can you give yourself a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm Vaughn Gittin Jr. I am the founder of RTR Vehicles, probably best known for being a world champion drifter and or championship winning off-road racer.
Awesome, yeah. And like you were getting into drift like way early, like well before the average teenager wanted to put a hydro and an ankle kit into their car. Like, kind of what attracted you to drift?
Growing up, I was a kid of action sports, skateboarding, BMX. I raced motocross as a teenager, but I always loved cars. I mean, I was that kid at 5 years old that had Hot Wheels pried out of my hands to take a wedding ring down the aisle at my parents' wedding, and always just loved cars. And when I was 18 years old, I ended up buying a 240SX from a friend that crashed it out front of our college. As I started figuring out how to hook that car up, I came across videos of drifting, and it was old school, like Team Orange events at Ebisu. And I was just enamored with this sport that you could basically, show your style and personality from behind the wheel. Like, to me, it was like, skateboarding with a car. I fell in love with the idea of it. At that time, I was like going to industrial parks and parking lots and just doing burnouts and donuts on weekends with friends. Then once I saw that video, it kind of became like a vision of like trying to connect a track in my head. And it was around that time. This would have been probably 2000 to like 2002 when I was just kind of having fun. And then around 2002, 2002-ish was when I saw this advertisement for Drift Out Wednesday at E-Town. And it was Chris Forsberg and Tony Angelo did a video advertising to come to this event, showing up at Drift Out Wednesday, and realized that like the skateboarding, the BMX, the motocross, and the fun in the parking lots made me really good at car control. None of us knew what we were doing, but I was able to like connect the course, and I really just fell in love with like the cars, the culture, the people. And it was after that, it was like all I wanted to do. I was in IT at the time making pretty good money, and I was just literally spent every dollar on living expenses and building my car. And I just loved the challenge. I loved all of it from that moment. It was just pretty much haven't stopped looking back from then.
That's awesome. And what was like the shift point between like passion and profession? Like, when did that kind of happen?
Yeah, I mean, that was 2002, 2002-ish probably is when that was. And so from like 2002, 2003, I was just going to as many events as I could. Late 2003, I had got invited out to Fontana Speedway for an event called the Nopi World Finals. I was invited out there to do some drifting exhibitions based on kind of making a name for myself on the East Coast. Long story short, I maxed my credit card out. I shipped my car out to Kaz and got a two-way put in it, because up till then I was running a viscous limited slip out of a junkyard 300ZX. And yeah, I maxed out my credit card, flew out, picked up my car from Kaz, went and tested it in a local church parking lot on the way to Fontana Speedway. Thank you, church, whichever you were. I got to Fontana Speedway, and I did a drifting exhibition with Team Orange, and a lot of other, drivers. It was the first time I met Dai Yoshihara, in fact. And, me and Dai were talking like cavemen back and forth to each other, because I didn't know how to speak Japanese. He didn't know how to speak English. And, honestly, I was a Maryland boy. This is my first like real taste of culture. I hadn't never been to California and never been around so many different, cultures at once. And I loved it. And, but I didn't just go out there to drive. I went out there, always had a little bit of a business mind and entrepreneurial head on my shoulders. And I went out there with proposals and just walked around and met everybody that was there, all the vendors. And that's where I met Falcon, who ultimately was, the first team that I drove with. And after that event, Formula D, right around this event, announced their series, following that event, basically Falcon let me know they wanted me to be on the team. And, at the time it's fun to think about, but I, basically painted my car, my first S13 that some people might or might not remember, but I did drive a S13 for a year in Formula D. That year it was 10 tires an event, and I had painted my car that, the entire livery and effectively title sponsorship. Ultimately, it was a great, mutual investment because the future was bright for us. And so, 2004 to roughly, 2007, around Formula D, I would, leave work early. To get to whatever event I had to get to, whether I was trailering it or my dad or my cousin, or, we all were in a car driving, and take a red eye home or figure out how to get home for work on Monday. That's what I did. And come like 2006, after doing that for going on 3 years, I still wasn't really making much money in drifting. Certainly wasn't making as much as I was in IT, but I kind of came to a crossroads where I felt like I was kind of half in my IT job and like half in my passion. And I kind of came to the realization of like, what do I have to lose if I, quit my job and try this? Like, I'll still have my brain, so I could go back to it if I wanted to. And I just made that step. It was very uncomfortable. I didn't know. I just, my gut and my heart told me I had to give it a try. And so I quit my very well paying IT job in Arlington, Virginia, and just went full in on my passion.
I love that. I love that. I love hearing those stories. I mean, I'll digress a bit here just for a second. I come from the veteran world. I spent 20 years in the military, and my whole, thing is like I've just been chasing the photography thing, I kind of like I haven't really. I won't say I've always wanted to fully commit. Like I've done almost everything to do that, and I'd say King of the Hammers this time was like I actually named the one rock on the qualifying course. I called that podcast rock because I would just hammer every dude that came up there to just drill them for like information on how do I evolve this? How do I make it like permanent? I just
Yeah.
love those type of stories.
Yeah, no, it's a tough it was definitely a tough decision, especially then drifting had no history. Now you can look at, teams like ours and, Papadakis and Forsberg and, and a lot of people that have, successful, and there's at least something that's happened to like, oh, I could do something like that. Whereas at this time that didn't exist, but it just felt like the right thing, and I think, unsolicited advice, what I've learned just over the past over 20 years, I believe that the universe rewards passion. And like, if you acknowledge the realities of universal laws, then you have to know about the law of attraction. Man, when you're passionate about something and you just have that like nonstop thought about doing it, how to evolve in it, and it just like encompasses everything that is you. To me, that's just a definition of purpose. Ever since that moment, like I've just constantly, don't believe me, it's been a lot of challenges, throughout it, but I've been able to attract the things that I need to make the passion work. You could say it's woo woo or whatever you want, but I am an absolute living and breathing reflection of that. I didn't have a business plan. Never had a business plan for RTR. When I decided to start that, you just feel it, and if you have the work ethic and the mindset to chase that passion, I don't know how you could be unsuccessful if it's real, and what I mean by real is not because of what you see on Instagram or what the allure of it is, but like it's in you.
I absolutely love that we kind of went down this rabbit hole for a second. I appreciate it. No, I do really appreciate it. I believe almost everything that you just said. And I really do love that. And I love passing that sort of stuff on to fellow vets that do podcasts and stuff with them. Again, we're digressing a bit off the interview, but yeah, I love everything you just said there. It's when we transition, we have to find that purpose and be passionate about it and truly believe in whatever we're gonna recreate ourselves in. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
and that life, photographer or what I do, it can never be a job. Like you got to do a means to an end, right? You have to create your reality, but like just doing it requires so much more of you You know what I mean? And just, I mean, you're a photographer. You were at King of the Hammers. You were in the cold, the hot, the cold, the dust, the dirt, the transiting all over the desert. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you only do that shit because you love it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's not, yes, driving a race car is a lot of fun, but there's so much more to be having the opportunity to drive the race car, and those are the things that really test your will, and only passion and true purpose can get you there. From my experience, I'm sure there's been some great, fakers out there, but yeah, if I didn't love this stuff, I would not be doing it.
Which is awesome. And so like RTR, like, and that just kind of like that evolved around you. And did, like, have you built a culture around that? Has it been like a purely organic, like, is it a living, breathing thing to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I started RTR, not to go too deep into it unless you want, but basically, when I first got into the Mustang, I had a reflection as to why, like, I never liked Mustangs growing up. What I saw as a Mustang, meaning what people were doing to them, what the aftermarket was offering for them, and to me it was just stale. It was like the same stuff. I mean, in 2005, the same stuff that my grandfather would have, or father would have put on his car, racing stripes and the window louvers, and like it just like had never been refreshed. And so once I kind of got into that community and culture of Mustang after debuting it in '05, I like fell in love with that. But I wanted something that like spoke to me. And by me, I mean like my generation. And I felt there was a lot of people that were more like-minded like me that were very turned off by how Mustangs were being presented at the time. And so that's when I decided to create a new generation of Mustang. I felt we had this really iconic car that a lot of us were overlooking because of that perception I shared with you. And I had fallen in love with the community, the culture. I was growing a relationship with Ford, and I wanted to do cool shit. That's really what started RTR. 28-year-old guy that just uh, wanted my Mustang personally to look really cool, but also wanted to inspire that next generation of Mustang owner. And to that day, or from then till this moment, I have just a relentless passion to win on and off the track with Ford. And so, I started that brand from nothing. I mean, I literally invested just about every dollar I made from drifting to get it off the ground, naturally, organically kind of grew it around the things that we were doing. And, here we are 17-ish years later, who's doing the math? And we have two production vehicles coming out with Ford that are, under the RTR brand. And so, for me, that just goes back to back up what it was, right? No plan, just passion, a compass of fun, and doing cool shit is literally what, one of our big things. I talk to all the guys whenever we're in meetings or whatever. I'm like, look, we know this. Cool shit wins. That's it. Which one of these choices takes us down that path? And we just follow that path. And it's been a good one for us so far.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. Because I mean, even me, as like, I used to like blow off a lot of steam messing with RC cars. I'll be on deployments and buy RC cars to mess around with. And of course, the old Mustang that you're like with the one that you were sponsored with, it was HPI. Okay, I think
Yeah,
it was.
HBI. Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, and I kind of seen that whole, and I never wanted a Mustang. I'll be 100% honest. I never wanted really a Mustang. I mean, I kind of looked at them; they were cool. Now I want a Mustang. Like, I look at them often. In fact, like the 350R is like, with the flat plane, is probably one of my most favorite cars to like, scope Facebook for. Facebook Marketplace, I'm looking for 350Rs. So
Yeah. It's been wild. It's been a really fun journey, and it's just great to reflect on and enjoying all of it for sure.
RTR also now kind of has like, the whole off-road scene. You've gone full off-road, you've gone full Ultra 4. Now you're in the dirt. The dirt's a whole new thing. So like you said that you dirt biked when you were younger. So like, was
Yeah.
like the dirt always kind of like a natural thing? You have, off-road trucks and stuff growing up, and
Yeah, no, I didn't have off-road trucks. I mean, I race motocross. Growing up on the East Coast, we don't have as much of a, infrastructure as you guys, or I don't actually know where you're at, but out west, where there's a lot of large BLM land. We have some national forests and trail stuff out here in private parks and things like that, but it wasn't so accessible for me. But motocross was. And so I got into motocross 13. I got my first dirt bike, and Budds Creek was my home track. Travis Pastrana, and I grew up in Annapolis, and so I was pretty ingrained in moto. And it was really funny because in 2014 I sat with my team and kind of did a study of, like, what's next. I've been drifting for a decade, and I just kind of was like, look, I'm a professional fun haver. Like, I want to try everything. I want to do everything. And, up until that point, I did some Trans Am. I did a like NASCAR Canada race and just kind of dabbling around a bit. But in 2015, I was on vacation. I'll never forget this. I was literally in Jamaica, walking on the beach, like just kind of out front of the resort or whatever. And Harry from Nitto called me. And I don't usually, my phone was more in my pocket for photos, but it was Harry. And I was like, let me see what's up. And he's like, hey, man, I'm like, what's up? And he's like, we have this race coming up. It's called King of the Hammers, and we have a spec truck available. Like, would you be interested in doing that? And I was like, is that race with like the desert and like the big rocks and like the gnarly climbs? And he's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. Let's do that. So again, I'll try to make the long story short because I can be long winded, but I basically, so fast forward to 2016, heading to the lake bed, right? I get a rental car. And I'll never forget this, right? I pull up on Boone Road where it goes from like the single lane to like the entrance to Hammers. And I'm like, I, I got brand new tennis shoes on, fresh gear, rental car, and I'm just like enter Burning Man with race cars, And I'm just like, what? So anyway, I get there and I see the Nitto squad and they take me into the truck. And so, I see the truck, it's got my livery on it. I jump in it. I'm probably like making race car noises and stuff in it. And Lauren Healy, now, my business partner and teammate in the RTR off-road, he hops in the passenger seat. He's like, what's up? And, I knew him because we were both Nitto teammates, but I didn't know him. I knew he was the man in Ultra 4. So I was pumped to have him in the passenger seat. He was like, let's go drive this thing. I'm like, all right. So we put helmets on and this jerk takes me over to this waterfall, right? And I'm like, he's like, I'm looking up at this thing, right? And he's like, put it in 4 low and go up that. And I'm like, how do you put it in 4 low? You know? And so anyway, I get it in 4 low and just right up it. And I'm just like, okay, like I got it. So I did a little bit more training with him and actually Bailey Cole, Dave's son, helped me out a little bit and got me through Chocolate Thunder a couple times. And I think the next day or 2 days later, I raced my first Ultra 4 race in the 4,800 class, every man's EMC race. I somehow became like the first crossover driver to finish this, let alone finish in the top 10. And through it, I basically just fell in love and just got the
Yeah.
hook, right? And I mean, it was for me, it was everything, right? I mean, it obviously the drifting translated very, very well. The vehicle placement, the car control, the comfort on loose surface, ability to control traction and really feel grip. We have become experts at that because we feel grip with tires spinning at, 30% over what the vehicle's moving. So I did really well. I was really proud. And basically from that moment, I was like, all right, how do I figure out I got 365 days to be here next year, And so I ultimately worked out opportunity to build a truck. I wanted to start in the 4,500 class, which is the class. Basically, it was a pro class under 44, and I didn't want to just jump into the big class. First of all, I couldn't afford it. Second of all, I had a lot to learn, a lot of experience to learn, and before I started racing with those freaking lunatics. And so yeah, I mean that was basically it. I raced 4,500 for 2 years, did really, really well. Ultimately got voted out of that class because people were upset that I had independent front suspension, even though the rule book allowed it. And they kind of blamed that on the truck that I was spanking their asses. So voted me out and then put me in 4,400 class. Then I was up with the big boys. Yeah, the rest is kind of history. More history in the making maybe. But I mean, 2 years of that class and I won the championship. In fact, in 2020, I won Formula Drift and Ultra 4 championship in the same year. which was huge. Never been done, obviously, but like just personally, I don't hang my head on. Yeah, I think trophies and championships are kind of like tokens of the effort. So for me, it more comes from like an effort standpoint of earning those results than it is necessarily getting the trophy. But yeah, it was a huge accomplishment for me, and I just really enjoy the challenge. I've built a great relationship with Lauren, and he's an OG, and we're just great compliments for each other. Different perspectives come from different places, and fully unified. It's been really special.
Yeah, yeah, and you like this year too. Like, you did. I think you did desert and EMC and 44 this year, didn't you? You did three
Yes.
classes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is wild. That's wild. When you see guys kind of Iron Manning through, multiple, the multiple races, it's pretty hardcore, I think, to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No, thank you. It it's fun, man. It's so fun, and it's a really cool battle of team, machine, and driver and co-driver out there. It's really cool.
Troll, what kind of humbled you about the desert and Ultra Four?
Oh,
Um,
I've humbled a lot out there. My first couple years were I mean, I did pretty good. I have a really great finishing record in hammers, but the thing about that my experience with that sport, when it bites you, it bites hard. And my first year, was it 2018? I think I did a front flip with my co-driver. We were driving in some dust. I was just listening to him and the notes, and we just all of a sudden ended up flipping. We were just driving, brrr, boom, and just front flipped the truck, and he had to get airlifted out and actually broke his back on a G out. Had some rolls and flips, and fortunately, never been injured, but it's ruthless, and it just takes one wrong move. Which is one of the things I really, really like about the challenge out there is it's just such an intense focus for so long. And one of the things that really is translated over from drifting as well is the mental game. A lot of people don't think about this, but drifting is an absolute intense sport, and it's only 40 to 60 seconds each lap.
mhm.
But you have to be perfect. Any other motorsport out there, you can make a mistake and make up for it. You can, as long as it's not the wrong mistake, obviously, but you lose a couple tenths on a lap here or second there, you got a couple hundred laps sometimes to bring it back. In drifting, you have to be perfect. And so that mental acuity and the ability to like that I've trained myself to kind of get in the zone and be ready to perform, and what has been massive for me to be able to lock in and hit off-road racing. We all make mistakes, but that's one of my what I would consider a superpower, in addition to just car control.
I'd
Yeah.
say one of your superpowers too, if I would to speak frankly, is the fact that you are humble. And I remember that was one of the key takeaways that I took away from last year's interview when you hopped up on stage, was you were like, yeah, like you basically were like, yeah, we got humbled out there, and you explained what you learned from that experience. Like, it wasn't excuses, it wasn't, oh, the car didn't perform, or the conditions weren't what I wanted them to be, or whatever. It was like, we did this, we learned this, we're gonna fix this for next year. And I thought that was rad.
Yeah, and that's motorsport as a whole, man. It's like, when you take it at face value, it's just like out just racing, woo. But like there's so much depth to what happens in motorsport and the experiences associated with them. And like, from the team level and the personalities and kind of how everybody manages the stress and when shit hits the fan, and the way that you learn to navigate those scenarios, to like those personal challenges when it's just you and the co-driver in the middle of nowhere at night and things just start going bad. And there's always growth from every single experience that I have. And that's one of the things that I love so much about it. And people always like, "Yeah, you've been doing this for so long. How can you do this?" I've not done anything for over 20 years in my life, consistently. It's just really special what motorsport can be if you approach it from the right level with that mind. And so I really appreciate hearing that people appreciate the realness, because that's just, that's all I really know how to be, and what I've been my entire career is just me. It makes it really easy for things like this because I can just talk and it just be me.
Yeah, 100%. And then, so yeah, I think this is probably a good segue to kind of transition to like talking about like culture, talking about like, we've seen like a lot of takeover culture over like the last year, events getting shut down, events being threatened, events being completely canceled. And then, we go into KOH, and last year article was kind of like, I kind of said that the desert was one of the last kind of free range areas for speed freaks, right? And like then you have kind of what happened at Chocolate Thunder, where like you're getting a chance to like BLM lands getting shut down and events could be possibly canceled and things like that. Well, one, what is your opinion on all that? And B, how do we even start to address it?
Yeah, it's tough. Man, I love culture that grows around motorsport, right? Like for me, one of my core reasons for having RTR and what we do is like I just want to inspire in hopes that like automotive culture is even a portion for others what it's been for me, meaning whether you decide to put a set of wheels on your car, you full blown go racing. It's like racing, or, automotive has been such an extension of my personality since I can remember. And it's just been so fulfilling. I mean, I met my wife through it, and tons of friends. But I'm a big fan of culture, spawning from motorsport and just in general automotive community. But I do have a line where it starts to be detrimental and like work backwards to the positivity of the things that we're doing. The takeover culture, if it was just in a parking lot, I would see it's great. I would say it's great. Aside from some of the riffraff you see and, whether it's a gun or a fight or like the things that can happen anywhere, right? But like just doing it and shutting down a public street is just ignorant. It really just makes everybody, especially drifting, which is why I have such a connection to that, is from the layman, it's a car going sideways making smoke. So now when like I'm explaining drifting, it could be someone could say, oh, like you see them drop, downtown San Francisco shutting streets down. Like, no, no, no. It's like completely different than that, but they're connected. It's a culture that has grown from this professional sport that we do. I really just kind of wish that we could figure out a way, because I also feel bad for the culture in a level because I don't think everybody just wants to go out and cause ruckus. I think they just want to have fun in their cars and they're willing to do so at whatever the expense may be. And so, I would love to see, many cities everywhere. I don't care where you're at, there's an open abandoned parking lot. Can we start having these, skate park inspired places for people to go have some fun in their car? I would love to see that. Like Deerdick a long time ago did the safe spot skate spots. I'd love to see something like that with the automotive culture to get it off the street, allow people to do it at a safe place that maybe can't afford a track day or don't have a track within reach of them, that there's at least a place they could do it. And so, it's interesting to talk about because like I know I don't like the takeover culture, but I do like the fact that people are wanting to go have fun and challenge themselves in their car. I just wish that we could find a amenable place to do it, that's safer for everybody.
Yeah, like 100%. Even in the army, I was in a car club, a bunch of Euro and JDM cars. And like that culture was amazing because if you drove down that main drag in Winnipeg, you had all the muscle car dudes from like guys that are like in their 60s and 70s still building their cars to the JDM kids, the Euro kids, to everybody. And we'd line down that whole street, all the little strip malls. And people would sit on lawn chairs. So we'd watch. And back then it was kind of okay. We'd race light to light. It was kind of
Right.
like an acceptable thing on Sundays. And I mean, it's not so acceptable now, but that culture was so cool because everybody was like cool with each other. You see some of the other stuff where it's like, some people are doing it for clout. And it's like, do we isolate those people and like call them out, kind of like how they did with some of the kids with Chocolate Thunder? Like, hey, you guys are being ridiculous. We're going to hold you accountable because we're not going to punish the whole group and risk losing all this to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like contrary, to my comments about having a safe place. To your point, you mentioned Chocolate Thunder. Yeah, and it's like you have a place. Literally, you can hang out and drive there all night long, and then you decide to like turn it into fist fights and throwing beers and shooting fireworks in the crowd. Like this is the kind of shit that is just like a horrible representation. It's just like it's just absolute. That is just just insanity to me. Why, how somebody would do that, get it shut down for everyone. You know, the number one thing at this race that's been going on for 20 years, they said, is don't shoot fireworks. You know, they didn't necessarily have to say don't fist fight and throw beer cans at people. You know, that's kind of an unspoken thing, but it's like
Mhm.
it's just crazy. You know, it's like it should be like-minded people getting together, having fun, and be yourselves. But like, the fighting, and it's just crazy to me that that happened at King of the Hammers. And I frankly don't know what to do about it because it's not a representation of the culture. It's a couple bad eggs that had too many drinks, wants to show off, wants to be cool with his three friends, whatever it is, and they make the entire community look bad. And I frankly don't know that it's possible to do anything about it, other than just have these types of conversations about it. Because if culturally it becomes frowned upon, then it's nothing's cool about it. Everyone's trying to be cool.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things, and I think you kind of nailed it. Um, and I think a lot of people have that same attitude. The stewards of the sport, the stewards of automotive culture, are all basically saying the same thing. Like we need to kind of like be clear that this is not cool behavior. So on the flip side, what would be like what if you had the 18-year-old, you know, version of you in today's right now Instagram clout culture, but just wants to be a gearhead? What would be your advice to him?
Well, I mean, I'm very grateful that I've been raised and evolved, to have a pretty good moral compass. When I was 18, that might have been a little bit looser. But I would just say be yourself and do the things that you would want others to do to you, right? The golden rule. Live by that and try to inspire, and not necessarily try, but like just by being yourself and doing things that like a proper moral compass would approve of is inspiring, can be inspiring to others. And I think that that's the most important thing. Like it's when you start to try to be something that you're not is when the problems happen. Nobody naturally wakes up in the morning and wants to throw a full beer can and hurt somebody, right?
Mhm.
Nobody naturally wakes up in the morning and goes and says, "Oh, I want to go start a brawl at a off road recreation area," or shoot a mortar into a crowd of people and hopefully people get burned. Like that is all, induced by other things, right? Whether it's the want to be perceived as cool or to get views or alcohol or whatever it is, So I think it's really that would be it, be yourself, the self that, you'd be proud of. You
Yeah.
wake up in the morning proud to look in the eye. We've all made mistakes and we've all, had that moment of like, oh my gosh, if I could just take that back, like mitigate those, make them accidents, not conscious decisions.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, 100%. I mean, we all make mistakes. I mean, both of us, I think, are at age where we've done enough, hooligan type things where we're like, ooh, a little bit cringy, but
Oh yeah.
it was never, yeah, I don't think it was ever like, yeah, like a purely conscious, like, I'm gonna do this for a video. It's like I just got carried away, and yeah,
Yeah.
I learned something from that. Yeah, and then so like talking also like a bit culturally too. Like, what do you think of some of these new hybrid events? Like Darren did that speed metal where you had drift cars and trophy trucks. I thought that was awesome. I think that's a
Yeah.
new formation of cool.
Yeah. I thought that was super sick. Man, anytime look, we're all the same people at some level, right? Whether it's top level NASCAR drivers. I mean, you saw, Biffle and his relationship with Cletus, and I've fortunately got to hang out with them multiple times. I mean, I worked with Biffle in '07 doing a drift event in California in Fontana, or sorry, at Irwindale. We're all the same people. It's just about, Darren Parsons grew up in California. He was a desert bro originally. he saw drifting. He's like, "Oh, what's going on over there?" He got in. He's like, tried it. He's like, "Holy shit! It's like driving my truck, but it's smaller, and I can't jump it, but it's still fun." And we anytime any of us get together, whether it's any of the OG, off-roaders and myself or any of my friends from drifting, we all get together. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? We are very cut from very similar cloths, different backgrounds, but a passion of just doing cool shit and having fun behind the wheel. And that's what it's about. And I think, the more people that inspire that, the takeovers and the Chocolate Thunder incidents, they're really minimal
Yeah.
compared to
Yeah.
the volume of actual good, clean fun happens. It's just that they get seen so much louder. You know what I mean? It's such a juxtaposition to the norm. It just goes everywhere. So we do also need to remember that, like, we're not in dire straits here. There's not like this, infestation eating up our culture, but there is a very loud, challenge ahead of us, and we just need to, offset it and denounce it. I think that's really all we can do.
Very valid point is the fact that it isn't like any like we're not even into double digit percentage of the culture. It's a very, very like point something of the culture.
Yeah.
And yeah, and because of cameras and because of social media, it is blown up. I mean, enough that it can threaten events and things. And but I think because it is so small, it is something that is, yeah, we can control. And I don't say like control, like, but adjust, I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what do we get to look forward to this year and in the future for Vaughn?
Yeah, well, look, I'm one of my greatest, things right now is the collaboration vehicles we have coming out with Ford. We a true collaboration team effort between the RTR Vehicles team and the Ford engineering teams to produce the Mustang RTR and the Bronco RTR. I mean, they're basically entry level enthusiast focused, very well contented vehicles that are going to be a extremely good price point. Mustang pricing will be announced here in the next month, and then Bronco will be a little bit later. But those, Mustangs coming out, we'll start seeing those on the road in like June-ish. And okay to buy is like in like the next few weeks, I think. So that's been a dream of mine since I started RTR. So, almost 20 years in the making. I'm just super proud of that. Off-road racing, I'm heading to the Mint in a couple weeks. I'm pumped on that. I'm running my 44. Lauren's racing or running the 4400 Unlimited truck from Hammers. Lauren's racing the Bronco Raptor, and Bailey's racing her 4600 truck with the RTR off-road team. We've got eyes on Baja this year, maybe even two, the 500 and 1000 potentially. We've got Moab coming up soon. We'll be going to that Easter weekend, so that'll be fun. Drifting, we're running a full drifting championship with James Dean and Ben Hobson, and I'll be doing 2 rounds of that. Definitely looking like Atlanta and the final round of Long Beach right now. We have a couple events: Grid Life, Hyperfest, Holly Ford Fest. Just some enthusiast events, Mustang Weeks. So yeah, man, staying busy. Trying to fulfill my hunger for this passion and also be a, stellar father and halfway decent husband.
All right. And if I were to give you, if I had one last question, what's one thing that we don't know about Vaughn? Like, are you playing like, Call of Duty Mobile in between freaking events or, have Pokemon collection or something? You know what I mean? Like, what is something that we would be like, what?
Yeah, let me think about that. I really kind of put it all out there. My kids like Pokemon, and so by default, I have, tried to understand that mainly because I don't want them, bending valuable things for themselves. Um, no, I think, one thing a lot of people don't know about me is like how much I enjoy my time on a skid steer back in my woods.
Like,
I have my skid steer and I go out, and I was, in fact, yesterday I was clearing some new trails for the boys and just, you know, being that grown up kid, knocking things down and chopping things. And so, yeah, I would say skid steer time is one of my favorite passions. And I'm second to that, I would say I'm a foodie that's very conscious about the types of oils and the quality food that I put in my body. Um, I'm trying to be 28 forever, so I gotta do some things to support that.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, dude. I appreciate this so much. It was such an awesome interview and great discussion. Thank you.
My pleasure,
Yeah,
man.